Topic. The introduction was done in Form 1, where Classification 1 was done. Just a quick recap of what was discussed in Form 1 is a definition of the term classification, which was grouping of living organisms based on their structures. So when we are grouping these living organisms, we use their external structures and we put them in one group known as a taxon. So in Form 1, there were 7 taxonomic units of classification which were discussed. So this classification enables us to arrange information about living organisms in an orderly manner in order to avoid chaos and confusion. Student, if I give you a living organism such as a rabbit, you name it by your mother language, scientifically we may not communicate because that organism has different names. So classification enables us to communicate where these living organisms are given scientific names. All living organisms are scientifically identified by 2 names, that is the genus name and the specific name. So that classification is known as binomial nomenclature. Bi means 2. Bi means 2. That is why we have the 2 names, the genus and the specific name. And therefore, the definition of the term binomial nomenclature is the scientific double naming of living organisms using the genus and the specific name. So the 2 names give us the species of an organism. So we have different features that are used to classify these living organisms. Some of the features used to classify animals includes, number 1, the body symmetry. So some of the living organisms have bilateral symmetry. That means they can be divided into 2 equal parts, while others have radial symmetry, meaning they cannot be divided into 2 equal parts. They can be divided into several parts for the same feature. Presence or absence of the body cavity. Some, such as organisms belonging to phylum Arthropoda, have a serum in their body cavity. Presence of the alimentary canal. Some of them have oral canals or oral cavity. Others have anal openings. Presence and the type of excretory organs. So different living organisms have different excretory organs, such as we use the kidney as our excretory organ. Type and number of external appendages. So some organisms have 6 number of appendages, others have 2, others have 8 appendages. Appendages are limbs, the legs. Others have different types of skeletons which can be used to classify these organisms. For example, we have ourselves who have endoskeletons. Organisms such as locusts have exoskeletons, which can be used to classify them. The body shapes, some of them are segmented. So we have some which have more than 1 segment. Others have 3 segments, and others have very many segments on their bodies. For example, a grasshopper has 3 segments. That is the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. An organism like a spider has 2 body parts. and others like earthworms has several segments on their bodies. The other feature that can be used to classify living organisms is the structures of the gaseous exchange. So some of them use gills like fish, others use lungs like man, others use skins like frogs, others use the lining of the buccal cavity again like frogs. Another feature is the body coverings. So we have different body coverings such as the scales for fish, we have hair, and others like birds have their bodies covered with feathers. Mode of reproduction can also be used to classify these living organisms. So some of them, or some living organisms, have a complete metamorphosis, that is a 3 cycle. Others have incomplete metamorphosis, which they undergo to complete their life cycle, which can also be used to classify these living organisms. So those are some of the features that are used to classify animals in different taxons. Remember, I said a taxon is just a group of living organisms which have similar structures. So for plants, plants are also living organisms which can be classified using external features such as, number 1, presence or absence of vascular system. So some plants have vascular bundles, that is the xylem and the phloem. Others lack the vascular bundles, like we are going to see as we continue with our discussion. The other one is the type of reproductive structures. Some plants have capsules, others have sporangium, which are used, which produce the structures that are used in reproduction. The other one is the flower form, the number and the position of the floral parts. We have the type of fruits, and finally we have the structure of the seed and the pattern of placentation. So basically, those are some of the structures that are used to classify living organisms in their different taxons. Remember, I said in Form 1, there were 7 taxonomic units of classification which were discussed. And all those living organisms were classified using those external features. So today, in Form 3, we're going to look at classification 2, that is Kingdom Monera. So Kingdom Monera comprises of the simplest forms of living organisms. It comprises of living organisms that are simple in that they are unicellular living organisms. So some of the living organisms that belongs to Kingdom Monera includes 1, bacteria, and number 2, the blue-green algae. So there is a diagram of the bacterium there. It's a unique living organism in that it has some features that are found in other living organisms, but somehow different from the features that are found in other living organisms. For example, we have different characteristics of these organisms, which enables us to classify it as Monera, or in Kingdom Monera, and not a Kingdom Plantae or Kingdom Animalia. So one of the characteristics is that these organisms are microscopic, meaning we cannot see them with our naked eyes. They can only be seen by the use of an instrument known as a microscope. Student, I know you are conversant with a light microscope, which has a low resolution, and therefore when we are studying this organism, we can only see more features by the use of an electron microscope. So these organisms are microscopic in that they cannot be seen with our naked eyes. Number 2, they are unicellular. Unicellular means that they are single-celled. And single-celled organisms are simple organisms which lack most of the elaborate structures that are found in multicellular organisms. So kingdom Monera comprises of organisms which are unicellular. Number 3, their nuclear material is not surrounded by a membrane. That is, they do not have a true nucleus, and therefore they are said to be prokaryotic. Number 4, they lack cell organelles such as mitochondrion and the chloroplasts. So chloroplasts are organelles that are commonly found in organisms that are able to carry out photosynthesis. And the reason as to why I've said that these organisms are unique is because the second example there is blue-green algae. I will explain why blue-green algae is a unique living organism that belongs to this kingdom Monera, though we are saying that these organisms lack chloroplast organelles. Number 5, they have a rigid cell wall. If you look at that diagram, you will see a cell wall labeled somewhere. This cell wall is different from the cell wall that is found in plant cells, in that the cell wall that is found in plant cells is made up of cellulose material, but the cell wall that is found in a bacterium is made up of a microprotein or the mucoprotein, and this cell wall gives the bacterium a definite shape, just as it does in plants.